Okay. All right, so I'm Sarangi Punyasena. I am an assistant professor here in plant biology, and my data set of choice is fossil pollen, and I am one of the streams of variety that Emmy just talked about 10 minutes ago. So if you think about fossil pollen, one way to, I guess fossil pollen is essentially a proxy, right? It's a microscopic census of past vegetation that's preserved in geologic sediments. So a few cubic centimeters of sediment will really give you a signature of what that region looked like decades, hundreds, thousands, to hundreds of millions of years ago. And this type of data, quite small, is actually quite powerful. It's used in a variety of different fields, right? So most pollenologists, people who study pollen, work in biostratigraphy. This is the correlation of geologic strata, right? So the way we date, age, and correlate. Most geologic sedimentary data, right, is using biostratigraphy, the fossils within, and pollen is really a big use, particularly in things like the petroleum industry. So this is where most pollenologists work and live. Pollen also contributes to paleoclimate analysis, so obviously the vegetation reflects the climate of the past, and as a result you can use pollen data within many of these global climate models to either verify, right, some of the predictions that are being, or past predictions that are made, or past reconstructions that are being made, as well as inform these models. Mike talked a little bit about the paleoecology side, right? So we can understand past dynamics using these past vegetation signatures. You could also understand evolution, right? Speciation extinction rates on much longer time scales. And of course, the CSI application of pollen is in forensics. Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol has become really interested in, basically tracking the original origin of a lot of packages using things like pollen data. So, as a graduate student, one of the reasons why pollen appealed to me, right, is because it is really, before I knew it was the term big data, it was a big data source. You're basically talking about the entire terrestrial history of vegetation, so that's about 500 million years of data. And because it's quite small, found in a lot of sedimentary rocks, you have billions upon billions of potential specimens, right? If you wanted to, you could analyze a huge, massive data set. And basically, these data sets are temporally continuous, so you have a nice long record in a region across a range of environments. So this is a really, potentially, a huge, huge data set. But really what's holding us back, right? Why hasn't pollenology dominated the world? It's really because limited data acquisition rates. So this is a very, very highly specialized skill, being able to see, right, see a pollen grain and basically say what it is, recognize it, right? So this is, and a lot of the methods we use haven't really changed from the late 19th, early 20th century, right? It's still person, man originally, right, and microscope. We also don't have formal mechanisms for evaluating the accuracy of any given identification and the consistency of identifications. The way we communicate as a scientist is really through very qualitative descriptions of, our numbers are quantitative, right? Our counts are quantitative, but the actual IDs themselves are qualitatively described. So as a result, we don't really have identification confidences that are published, right, with our data, and therefore the uncertainty in any given ID can't really be propagated through these larger meta-analyses. Okay, and then essentially we have a very variable taxonomic precision, right? So we basically don't work with species. So I took a lot longer than I thought, but basically the three big questions I'm looking at is improving the quantity. How do we transform pollen data into a bigger, higher throughput analysis, right? How do we improve the consistency and accuracy of IDs? And really, how do we get at the holy grail, which is these really species identifications, which is the currency of ecological data. And really, the reason for this is not just for larger, bigger counts, right, but because we can actually really test ecological and evolutionary hypotheses with these types of better data sets, right, and also expand to the variable types of data that that Emmy described. And so what does my data look like, right? Mostly it's a visual data set, right? I'm talking about images, and images taken with multiple types of imaging modalities, right? So we can use different types of microscopes that recovers different types of morphological information. We may want to compare, right, the various types of information that's gone, and so this is, I should point out, it's three-dimensional information, but depending on the microscope used, the recovery of morphological information will vary, especially in the 3D plane. One of the things we... No, this is actually some of the modern specimens. So this is croton, mabia, and grass. But yes, but you can have fossils that look very, very similar. And I'll show you some 20-million-year-old ones in a second. Oh, no, or maybe not. And so basically we're talking about, we're also looking at really emerging techniques, right, to get even finer morphological information. This is super structure, super resolution, where we can get more higher frequency data than you would with conventional fluorescence, right, as well as high contrast techniques with DIC. And so other things we're doing is actually automating this imaging process, right, so we can scan dozens to hundreds of slides at a time, right, and these are really big files uncompressed, so we can generate 8 terabytes a day with this machine if we really wanted to, right, and we can compress it. So this is basically a single sample that's about 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters and basically 60 layers. You know, these are, we're talking dozens of microns, is about 500 gigabytes uncompressed. Using some of these automated slides, I've been working with David Cheng in the Illinois Informatics Institute for creating ways of automating the segmentation, right, identifying what is pollen, not pollen, and as well as classifying them. And so we're creating an automated so this is the high throughput side of my research, or pipe dream, right, here. And this is an example of what it looks. Basically, this is the scan, this is segmentation, this is finding the in-focus data in red and the rest of the pollen in green. And we can actually get counts in very limited models that are better than the human expert. We're also working on impossible problems like telling grasses apart, 11,000 species, and they all look alike. And one way to do that is to look at surface texture and really quantify the variability that we see in texture in a way that we can't describe with words, right? And this is using basically applied mathematical models of the relationship between pixels. And we're also creating image-based searches, right, and semantic modeling. These are 20-million-year-old pollen grains that I promised, and really a powerful way to search through our data is by image, right, basically, versus description. And so that's one thing that we would really like to develop, and actually for the entire community. And so basically the quick brown dog future, right, one thing we really need is a student-friendly or non-expert-friendly interface for some of the work we're doing. And the other thing that I found is that we've been working with Succeed to get supercomputing access, but really we don't need a lot of supercomputing power at any given time. We have bursts of intensity, so putting in a proposal and having all that time allocated is really not as useful for us as having it on an on-demand basis, right, for brief intervals with specific analyses. Pipe dream is to capture legacy images from the published data and web, and then also hopefully create as a community, right, some sort of infrastructure for permanent digital archives where all IDs, right, our actual data can actually be verified and expert knowledge, you know, can be captured, right? And so as a field, we actually build upon what we've done rather than starting from scratch with each basically career. Thank you.